Amarjit Chohan, born on March 5, 1957, originally hailed from Punjab, India. In the early 1980s, he relocated to the UK in pursuit of a better life and financial stability. There he established Jumbo Freight Services, an import and distribution company, which eventually led to his accumulation of wealth. He got married in the 1980s, but the marriage did not last, and he would separate from his wife in the early 1990s. In the mid-1990s, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for tax evasion. He was released after 18 months and swore to do better.
Mr. Chohan's company record
He started a new company called Cyber Freight Services, located near the Heathrow Airport. In 2000, Amarjit met Nancy when she was just 21 years old. And despite the significant age difference between them, they decided to tie the knot. Within a span of 3 years, Amarjit's business flourished, with an annual turnover of £4.5 million a year. By 2003, Amarjit and Nancy had 2 children, a 1.5-year-old son named the Devender, and a 2-month-old son named the Ravender. In January 2003, Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur, flew from India to England to help her daughter take care of her 2 sons.
Dave. Hello. Nina.
In late February 2003, Uncle Verma, Nancy's brother, stopped receiving phone calls from his sister. Although Uncle lived in New Zealand, the siblings had a strong bond and would talk to each other every week. So when the phone call from his sister's dog, it seemed unusual to Wunger. Wunger was also worried because in his last conversation with his sister, on the 14th of February, she had told him that Amarjit had not returned home the previous day and his phone was switched off. Nancy was frantic and called his company, but she was told that Amarjit had an urgent meeting and had flown to Netherlands. Nancy found it unusual as emoji. It would always let her know if he was going away from meeting or work. Moreover, it was impossible for emoji to travel to Netherlands, as his passport was with the UK government, because he had recently applied for residency permit. Nancy would eventually receive a voice message from Amarjit, telling her that he would be back home soon. However, Nancy found the message strange, as Amarjit always left messages in Punjabi. But this particular voice message was in English. After Ankar was unable to get in touch with his sister, he contacted the Scotland Yard. The police went to the Chohan home and found it to be empty. There was no sign of a struggle, and nothing in the house seemed to have been taken. The family's clothes, suitcases, children's toys, and feeding bottles were all found inside the house. Police launched an investigation into the disappearance, and Ankar flew from New Zealand to England to search for his family during police investigation. Police found out that the family was last seen on 16th February 2003. Amarjit was seen driving his blue Ford Escort on the same day around Wiltshire in Hampshire. On the 21st of February, the Ford Escort was found to be enrolled in an accident, with 2 mysterious men inside it. They also found out that, a few days after the family's disappearance, a business acquaintance had turned up at the CEBO Freight Services with documents and a power of attorney signed by Amarjit Chohan. The documents contained surprising news that Amarjit had decided to leave England with his family and had transferred the ownership of the company to the acquaintance. 3 days later, on the 24th of February, Emergency CEBA Free Services received a title letter postmarked from Calais, France. The letter claimed to be from Amarjit, And in the letter, he had written that he had enough of England and that he was going to India with his family. Ankur said it was impossible, since a family's passports were with the UK government, and it was also difficult for their family to fathom why Emojis would sell his business, which he had built from scratch. Additionally, the family's bank accounts were left untouched, which added to the sense of suspicion. At this point, Wanger was worried that the family may have been abducted or potentially killed then in April. Wanger's worst fears were confirmed when Amarjit's body was discovered floating in the sea by a father and son who were canoeing near Bournemouth. Spear. What transpired shocked the British police, as well as the people. The Chohans had been kidnapped and killed by three men: Kenneth Deegan, William Hornsey, and Peter Rees. The reason for their murder was Amarjit's business. The trio had planned to get their hands on his successful business, through which they wanted to launder drugs money. The mastermind behind the kidnapping and the murder was Kenneth Regan, who already had a lengthy criminal past. Regan was known for drug trafficking, fraudulent activities, and criminal dealings across London. In 1998, he was caught and convicted for smuggling 30 kgs of heroin. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but got out after serving only 4 years. Kenneth joined the Emojis company after he got out, and for the next few months, he devised a plan to get rid of Emojis and take over his business. Police were able to construct a timeline of the events. It is now known that on the 13th of February 2003, Kenneth convinced Emoji to meet up with a prospective buyer for his company at Stonehenge once Emojis arrived. Kenneth Regan, William Halsey, and Peter Rees kidnapped him and took him to Regan's home. Subsequently, they gagged and bound Emojis. They then tortured and threatened him into signing blank papers. Kenneth then later wrote on the blank peoples that Emojis had handed over the company to him. Emojis was kept alive for the next few days. Kenneth soon realized that he needed to get rid of Amarjit's family as well in order to support the story that Amarjit left the country. Kenneth and his accomplices then kidnapped and murdered Nancy, her mother Challenges, and the two children, Devender and Ravender, after murdering the family. Kenneth showed up at the Siwa Freight Services, carrying the sign letters and power of attorney, granting him the control over the company. Although the staff had their doubts, they had no choice but to comply, since the letters had been signed by their boss. Moreover, the staff knew Emojis had been in prison for tax evasion in the past, making Kenneth's story not too far-fetched at first. The killers had buried the bodies on a 50-acre pharmacist owned by a woman named Belinda Brevin. Kenneth had met Belinda after he got out of prison in 1998. Belinda at the time was looking for a job, and Kenneth hired her at the Siwa Freight Services. Belinda had no idea they had buried the bodies at her estate. She had seen two men, Kenneth and William, digging in her field. However, they had told her they were searching for drainage. Belinda did not think much of it at the time. On the 19th of April, fearing that the police might find out about the burial site, Regan decided to move the bodies from the farm and dumped it in the sea. Amarjit's body, his wife Nancy's body, and Nancy's mother, Sharonjit's body, would be found in the next few months. However, the bodies of the children have never been found. Although the killers had cleaned up their tracks, one piece of evidence led the authorities to help convict the killers. When Emojis's body was found, police discovered a letter inside one of his socks. The letter was addressed to Regan on February 12th. Police believed that Emoji, suspecting that he was going to be killed, decided to use the letter to give the police a clue about his killer. Although the contents of the letter have never been released to the public, police say it provided enough information to link Regan to the murders. When the police conducted a forensic examination of Kenneth Wiggins' house, they found it to be remarkably tidy, with brand new carpets and furniture. However, they discovered a 1 drop of blood, presumed to belong to one of the Chohan children, which further connected Regan to their deaths. Based on the letter found in Amarjit socks, the letter which transferred Seba free services to Regan, and the killer's activity on Belinda's farm, Kenneth Regan and his accomplices, William Hornsey and Peter Reese, were arrested and charged with their family's murder. Kenneth and William were found guilty of the murders of all 5 members and sentenced to life in prison, while Peter Reese was found guilty for only Amarjit's murder and sentenced to 23 years in prison.